History usually remembers the explosions. We remember the flash of Trinity, the firestorm of Hiroshima, and the pillar of smoke over Nagasaki. We remember the weapons that worked. But there was a third weapon, a third core. Physically, it was unassuming. It was a sphere of plutonium-gallium alloy, measuring exactly 3.5 inches in diameter, roughly the size of a softball. It weighed 6.2 kilograms. If you were to hold it in your hand, which for a time the physicists at Los Alamos did, you would feel a distinct, unnatural warmth, the heat of alpha decay radiating from a metal that didn't belong in the natural world. This object was the third shot. It was the heart of the second Fat Man bomb, manufactured in a frenzy during the summer of 1945, destined to be dropped on the Empire of Japan. It was an object built for the express purpose of vaporizing a city, but the war ended before it could be loaded onto a B-29. The order came down from President Truman: no more bombs without his direct authority. And so, the sphere was spared its bellicose destiny. It did not detonate over Tokyo. It did not detonate over Sapporo. Instead, it stayed in the high desert of New Mexico. It sat on a desk at the Los Alamos laboratory, and because it was never used in anger, the scientists gave it a nickname. They called it Rufus. They treated it like a pet. They studied it. They played with it. And in return, it killed them. This is the exhaustive technical history of the object that came to be known as the Demon Core. It is a story of metallurgical genius, geopolitical hesitation, and the catastrophic hubris of the men who tried to tickle a dragon's tail. Part 1. The Metallurgy of Destruction. To understand why this object was so dangerous, we first have to understand what it actually was. The Demon Core wasn't just a lump of radioactive rock. It was a triumph of metallurgical engineering. Pure plutonium is a metallurgist's nightmare. It is one of the most complex elements on the periodic table. It has 6 distinct allotropes, or crystal structures. As pure plutonium heats up, its density changes wildly. It expands and contracts like a living thing. In its natural state, it is brittle, like glass. If you tried to machine it into a weapon, it would shatter. The scientists at Los Alamos discovered that if you alloyed the plutonium with a small molar percentage of gallium, about 3%, you could lock the metal into what is called the delta phase. The delta phase is stable. It is malleable. It can be pressed and machined into perfect, polished hemispheres. But there was another problem. Plutonium is chemically reactive. It oxidizes in air, turning into a powder that can spontaneously ignite. It is also a potent alpha emitter. If you touched the bare metal, the alpha particles would burn your skin and the dust would poison your lungs. So they coated the core in a thin layer of nickel. This nickel plating was the only thing separating the physicists from the radioactive heart of the weapon. It blocked the short-range alpha particles. It meant that theoretically you could handle the core with your bare hands. You could pick it up. You could feel its warmth. And they did. In the frantic days of 1945, there were no robotic arms. There were no remote handling chambers. There was just the desert, the lab, and the men who built the bomb. Part 2. The Lost Target. By mid-August 1945, the machinery of the Manhattan Project was running at full capacity. The gadget had worked at Trinity. Little Boy had destroyed Hiroshima. Fat Man had destroyed Nagasaki. The Demon Core was the 4th fissile pit ever produced, and the 3rd intended for combat. The logistical chain was already in motion. The core was scheduled to leave Los Alamos for Tinian Island on August 12th or 13th. Had it arrived, it would have been inserted into a Mark III high-explosive assembly. The strategic planners were looking at the maps. Tokyo had been firebombed into ash, but it remained the political center. Sapporo was largely untouched. Both were on the list for the 3rd shot. But on August 10th, after the devastation of Nagasaki, the political will in Washington shifted. President Truman intervened, halting the shipment. 5 days later, Emperor Hirohito announced the unconditional surrender. The core was stranded. It was an orphan of the war. But at Los Alamos, the work didn't stop. The physicists needed to know exactly how their creation worked. They needed to know its limits. And so, Rufus was moved to the Omega site in Pajarito Canyon, a lonely laboratory chosen for its isolation, specifically so that if an accident occurred, the radiation would be contained by the canyon walls. Part 3. The First Victim. Harry Daghlian. The first accident happened just days after the surrender. On the evening of August 21st, 1945, a 24-year-old physicist named Harry Daghlian returned to the lab after dinner. Daghlian was brilliant, a graduate of Purdue who had joined the project while still a student. He was part of the critical assembly group. He was working alone. There was a guard, Private Robert Hemmerly, sitting at a desk some distance away, but for all intents and purposes, Daghlian was solitary. His experiment was crude by modern standards. He was building a neutron reflector. He took bricks of tungsten carbide, heavy dense blocks weighing 4.4 kilograms each, and stacked them around the nickel-plated sphere. The physics were simple. The core was subcritical. It was leaking neutrons. The bricks acted like mirrors, bouncing those neutrons back into the core. The more bricks he stacked, the closer the core came to criticality, the point where the chain reaction becomes self-sustaining. Daghlian was building a wall around the dragon. He watched his Geiger counters. He listened to the rhythmic clicking of the strip chart recorder. He picked up the final brick. He intended to place it over the assembly, but not on it. He wanted to see how the reflection from the brick and his own hand would affect the neutron count. But as he moved his hand, the counters began to chatter violently. The system was going critical. Daghlian tried to pull his hand back, and then the accident happened. Whether it was the weight of the brick or a moment of sweat-slicked panic, the brick slipped from his grip. It fell directly into the center of the assembly. It cracked into the core, and the reaction was complete. Rufus went prompt critical. Part 4. The blue flash and the handshake. The air in the room glowed blue. Daghlian didn't run. He didn't hesitate. In a moment of supreme physical courage, he reached back into the assembly with his right hand and knocked the brick away. He stopped the chain reaction. He saved the facility. But in that brief second of contact, his right hand received a localized dose of nearly 40,000 rem. He felt a tingling sensation in his fingers, the deadly handshake. He calmly disassembled the rest of the pile to ensure it was safe, then turned to Private Hemmerly and asked to be driven to the hospital. The medical progression was horrifying. His hand blistered, then turned white. Then the skin sloughed off entirely. It was a three-dimensional burn. The radiation hadn't just cooked the skin, it had destroyed the cellular structure of the flesh down to the bone. Harry Daghlian died 25 days later. He was the first victim. Private Hemmerly, the guard who had been sitting across the room, received 31 rem. He survived the night, but the radiation found him eventually. He died 33 years later of leukemia. Part 5. The Cowboy Culture. You would think that Daghlian's death would have stopped the hands-on experiments. It didn't. The culture at Los Alamos in 1946 was one of can-do arrogance. These were the men who had cracked the atom. They had ended the war. They believed that risks were manageable if you were smart enough, fast enough, and careful enough. They called it the Cowboy culture, and the king of the cowboys was Louis Slotin. Slotin was a Canadian physicist, known for his bravado. He wore blue jeans and cowboy boots. He was a man who took pride in his manual dexterity. He didn't use bricks like Daghlian. He had a different method for testing criticality, a method so dangerous that Richard Feynman famously called it tickling the dragon's tail. Enrico Fermi, the father of the nuclear reactor, warned Slotin. He told him, "You will be dead within a year if you keep doing that." But the demon core was still there. It had cooled down after killing Daghlian, and now it was slated for the Operation Crossroads tests at Bikini Atoll. Before it shipped out, Slotin wanted one last demonstration. Part 6. The second victim, Louis Slotin. It is May 21st, 1946, exactly 9 months to the day after Daghlian's accident. Slotin is in the lab with 7 other men. He is showing them how to bring the core close to criticality using a beryllium reflector. Beryllium is much more efficient than tungsten. You need less of it. The setup involved 2 half-spheres of beryllium. The core sat in the bottom half. Slotin would lower the top half over it, like a clamshell. The protocol, the written rule, required the use of safety shims, small metal spacers that would physically prevent the 2 shells from closing completely. If they closed, the core would go critical. Slotin didn't use the shims. He found them clumsy. Instead, he used the blade of a standard, flathead screwdriver. He held the upper shell with his left hand, hooking his thumb through a hole in the top. With his right hand, he wedged the screwdriver between the shells. By twisting the handle, he could lower the shell millimeters at a time, watching the needle on the chart recorder rise. He was balancing the safety of the entire room on the friction of a screwdriver tip. At 3:20 p.m., Slotin is hunched over the assembly. His colleague, Alvin Graves, is standing directly behind him, looking over his shoulder. The screwdriver slips. Part 7. The ionization of air. The shell fell. The beryllium clam snapped shut. The demon core was fully reflected. Instantly, the room was filled with a brilliant blue flash. Now, there is a common misconception here. Movies and pop culture often call this Cherenkov radiation, but Cherenkov radiation happens in water, or a medium where particles move faster than light. That's not what happened here. This was the air itself breaking down. The pulse of gamma rays and neutrons was so intense that it stripped the electrons off the nitrogen and oxygen molecules in the room. As those electrons snapped back into place, they emitted photons of blue light. The air was glowing because it was being ripped apart at the atomic level. Simultaneously, the men felt a wave of heat. This wasn't thermal heat, like a fire. It was the energy of the radiation depositing directly into their skin. Slotin tasted something sour in his mouth, a metallic tang. It was the taste of his own saliva ionizing. His reaction was faster than thought. He jerked his hand up, flipping the beryllium shell onto the floor. The reaction stopped. The blue light vanished. The whole event lasted a fraction of a second, but the core had pulsed with 3 quadrillion fissions. Slotin stood up. The room was dead silent. He looked at his colleagues and said, "Well, that does it." Part 8. The chalk marks. What followed was a moment of grim scientific discipline. Slotin knew he was a dead man, but he was still a physicist. He ordered the men not to move. He took a piece of chalk and drew circles on the floor where everyone was standing. He needed the health physicists to be able to calculate the inverse square law. He needed them to know exactly how much radiation Alvin Graves, standing 2 feet away, had absorbed versus the guard standing 10 feet away. Slotin had absorbed over 2,000 rads of neutron radiation. He walked out of the building and vomited, the first symptom of acute radiation syndrome. His death was slower than Daghlian's, but more painful. Because the dose was higher, it wasn't just his blood that failed. It was his digestion. The radiation destroyed the lining of his intestines. He suffered from gastrointestinal syndrome. His hands, the hands that had held the shell, turned waxy and blue-white. The blisters were so deep, they were described as 3-dimensional sunburns. Louis Slotin died 9 days later, on May 30th, 1946. Alvin Graves, who was shielded by Slotin's body, survived, but he carried the scars for the rest of his life. He developed cataracts, a signature of neutron exposure, and died of a heart attack at age 55. Conclusion: the Godiva legacy. The laboratory director, Norris Bradbury, ordered an immediate halt to all hands-on criticality experiments. The era of blue jeans and screwdrivers was over. They built new facilities, kivas, where experiments were conducted remotely from a quarter mile away, using television cameras and robot arms. They built the Godiva reactors, unshielded machines that could safely pulse with radiation, allowing them to study the data without risking the scientist. And what of the core itself? Rufus, the demon core, was never detonated. It was considered too hot, too unpredictable. In the summer of 1946, it was melted down. Its plutonium was refined, mixed with other stocks, and cast into new cores. The atoms that killed Harry Daghlian and Louis Slotin were likely distributed across the US nuclear stockpile, sitting in warheads for decades, waiting for a World War III that never came. The story of the demon core is a modern tragedy. It serves as a reminder that the laws of physics are absolute. They do not care about your intellect. They do not care about your bravery. In the gap between 2 metal shells, held open by a trembling hand, lies the difference between a measurement and an execution.
Thank you so very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel for more content.